That, by the way, was the Chicago Symphony Orchestra performing the first concert in Millennium Park. So, any more questions?
Ed, what's the process for, you've got now clearly a wonderful temporary program underway. Mm-hmm. How does that happen, and how is it funded?
It's funded with endowments. The not-for-profit now is responsible for maintaining the garden, because they wanted to raise an endowment for that, because they thought if they didn't have the control of the landscape for the garden, it would go to hell in no time, mm-hmm. which is probably true. So the head horticulturist and the volunteers actually have a lot of master gardener volunteers. There's not many opportunities in the middle of the city that you can play in the dirt. So we interview them to make sure that the donors are going to be up to our standards, and we'll devote the time necessary to take care of it. So we have a volunteer coordinator who does that. And then we're raising more endowment money. We hope to have about $25 million in endowment, both restricted and unrestricted, to assist the city in what they're doing for programming. So the sculpture exhibitions are, we have about $3 million in endowment to run those, and we use the interest to bring the pieces to Chicago. Now, that's not a lot of money, so if we're lucky, we get maybe $120,000 out of the interest. And the Chinese sculptures, for instance, we got the sculptors to loan us the pieces. So there was no artist fee. We just had to ship them from China, which turned out to be pretty expensive, and then put them in place with cranes. We had to rent the cranes. We have to ship them back again. But it's all part of our budget, so they'll be there for 2 years, and so we're pretty creative about how we do it. Yes?
And who was the first one in on this? Who had the vision? Was there a collaboration between John and Mayor Daley, or?
It was. Here's how that happened. John, excuse me. John wanted to do something to commemorate the turning of the millennium. So he went to the mayor, I think it was in 1997, with an architect from SOM. They wanted to do the Grand Harbor that Daniel Burnham had envisioned for the front yard of Chicago. And the mayor said, no, I don't want to do that. I've got a project I want you to get involved with, and that was the creation of this music pavilion. So it was the mayor's idea to do the pavilion, but the evolution of the design from what SOM did, which the mayor loved, by the way, and it got approval of everyone. It wasn't easy to get it was easy to get the approval because what was there before was just a parking lot. So no one really cared what it was, as long as it was green. So the community was in support of it. But John really wasn't in favor of the Beaux-Arts scheme, and he wanted to, he was interested in getting the best in the world to be hired to do elements of the park. And the mayor he had to be brought along on that idea. But now he loves contemporary art and architecture because of what it does for his city. I mean, maybe emotionally he's not into it. This is not his favorite stuff, but when he thinks about the impact, it's a good thing.
I think the Pritzker Prize and the concentration on contemporary architecture by the Hyatt, the family.
That was a big impetus to move forward. They were one of the early donors, and they sort of set the standard.
What would have been their percentage of the early gifts? If you had 250 million?
220 from the private sector.
What were the first gifts in? Came in at what?
Actually, it was the first one was SBC. It's which then became AT&T. We had to change the name already once on that particular plaza. So they were the first major gift. But Cindy Pritzker was there, saying she had 15 million. She really started the ball rolling. And then after they made a commitment, it was actually easier to get the other families in Chicago that had the wherewithal to make contributions. Part of it was the hook of the turning of the millennium. You have a chance to have your name on this grand new park with your children can see it there for 100 years, and this chance won't come along again. John Bryan is happy that we started when we did. He wasn't sure he could raise much money today, but it'll improve. Yes?
How important is the clarity when you were talking about the process in the press early on? How important it is to have a real clear vision, and how did you manage to hold on to it with the uncertainty of the instability of planning and when you were getting all of the negative press?
Mm-hmm.
How did you and the mayor and the team sort of keep focused?
I drank a lot. I went home and had a martini every night, and that helped.
Without wavering, you know.
Yeah, well, the mayor was stubborn, and even though he maybe didn't like some of the design that was being developed, he wasn't going to let the press sort of cower him into changing anything and not giving up on the project. It was also too late. I mean, once you start, you have a big hole in the ground, you got to figure out a way to finish it. We did incrementally open parts of the park, so actually the ice skating rink opened in 2000. And we tried to get some of the negative press diminished by having something open earlier. So we did open one thing on the Millennium.
So you used sort of the press to kind of drive the park as well?
Well, it did make it certain parts open a little earlier, but the press was never, in spite of many trips to the editorial boards, and they never really would talk favorably about it. Now, the architectural critics weren't weighing in on anything until it was finished, but Blair Kamen, who is the Pulitzer Prize winning architect for the Chicago Tribune, loves the park. He has done 5 or 6 articles about it. He likes the fact that it is the one place in Chicago that everyone feels comfortable in, whether you're black, Hispanic, white, rich, poor, everyone comes and has a good time together. And and it's also helped the self-esteem of Chicagoans as a city that they like to live in. I mean, it has an incredible impact on Chicago. So the press be damned, and just charge ahead. And I was going to quit a few times, but I got to a point where I wasn't going to let the press get me either. So they used to follow me around and want quotes from me. And when I used to talk to community groups, fortunately most of those were closed, so they couldn't be in there. But I used to give presentations to the Chicago Architectural Foundation, and they would try to ask questions and trap me on something. But I became pretty adept at giving answers that wouldn't get me in trouble.
And would you say that your belief in the project sort of helped you?
Yeah, I believed it. I mean, I thought we were doing the right thing, and so I just was mean to my family for 5 years.
Your presentation, it sounded like the one get that you really wanted was Frank Gehry, and that once that happened, the rest was more flexible. But did getting him to commit and frame that park help bring the other pieces together and focus everybody?
Well, it did. There was a sort of a framework, and I also, people say, well, this is just a collection of crazy stuff. But the landscape really holds it together. It's the framework that connects all these pieces. And ultimately, the landscape will create rooms which will contain